What up, bros?
What up, bros?
And welcome to Bruh Meets World.
When it's Bruh Meets World.
Your Boy Meets World fan cast. Welcome to episode 45. I'm Siege.
I'm your boy, Tony Coitus.
Timothy, how are you doing today?
Yo, I'm doing good, man. I have you over to my new place, and we're about to have like a little Christmas hang, and it's gonna be a good time.
Yeah. I mean, 'tis the season. We're recording this in December officially.
Yes, yep.
By the time this gets out, it'll be December. So yeah, this will be your first December on the West Coast.
Yeah, is it different out here?
Yeah, it is. I mean, you're from Florida, so it's not like that different, but it does have a Christmas vibe that, you know, I think you wouldn't expect from LA.
I'm just super excited to do like Hollywood Christmas stuff. Like there's a bunch of just like rooftop showings of like Christmas movies.
There is, but I'll also let you know, no one's here during Christmas. It's like the one good thing about LA is major holidays, it becomes a ghost town.
That's fine with me. I'm looking forward to avoiding that traffic anyway. So.
Yeah, it's literally, you're like, did everyone die?
Yeah. It's the off season, guys.
Exactly.
But yeah, I'm also super excited to talk about this very important episode.
This episode knocked me out my chair.
All right, yeah, I'm glad that we're kind of on the same page with this.
Was like, here's the thing. I mean, even as a fan of Boy Meets World and knowing the major points, this literally just was like, oh, a kind of little fun theme. Oh shit, are we doing this?
Yeah. And this is this is the second to last episode of the season.
Yep.
So we're in May sweeps at this point. They're building up to this finale. And I'm surprised that we got so much in this episode versus the finale, because this felt like a finale episode.
Not only did this, well, it actually feels a little unfinished to me.
All right.
But you're right in the sense of like, if this was like the beginning of a 2-hour episode, I would be like, yeah, because whoa, we just took turns I was not planning for.
And a lot of character changes too.
Yeah.
Like big changes in just dynamics on the show, and let's
just get into it.
Let's get into this.
So let's start off with our Tell Me About It.
Tell me about it.
Alright, so this is season 2, episode 22, Career Day. It's career day at John Adams High, and all of our titular characters' dads show up, including the infamous Jedediah, Topanga's dad. Alan also shows up, who embarrasses Corey with his job as a grocer, but then we get a surprise. Shawn's dad, Chet Hunter. And Chet brings even more surprising news. Shawn's mother has taken off with their mobile home. In a B storyline, Eric is studying for the SATs and not handling it well.
In a C storyline, Jonathan and his lady have some big decisions and conversations.
Yeah, well, they don't have any. That's what I like about it. In the Tale as Old as Time TV trope, they have been seeing each other for a while because it's been... We've seen them. Well, actually...
I haven't seen her since that Turnaround Dance episode, actually.
Exactly, which should have been more than 3 months ago, if I'm not...
It was Christmas, yeah.
So, I'm just saying that she was like, we've been seeing each other for 3 months. I was like, so it sounds to me like you were hitting it for a little bit, and then you were like...
100%. 100%. Because she was on a few episodes even before that Turnaround one.
Exactly. So...
yeah, that storyline, as soon as I was like, this is kind of coming out of nowhere, but they brought it back in. I thought they did a good job.
Well, I also thought that was a way of showing that Turner has his own life. You know what I mean?
100%.
Like, he's not just waiting around, and they were like, oh, he's not doing anything.
Well, even Shawn says, like, oh, I didn't realize you guys had a life outside the school, which I think is so true of students. Like, they really just think that teachers plug, turn off at the end of the day.
Well, we were talking about Mean Girls earlier today, and that whole scene in Mean Girls where she's like, it's weird seeing teachers outside of school.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, oh, yeah, you're a person.
Dog walk upright.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so I want to get into roll call, and I want to get into roll call because we have to talk about our boy. But before we do that,
of course,
let's talk about a different boy. Adam. Adam was the kind of new student who was like the heckler.
Him a name?
They didn't give him a name, but he's listed as Adam on IMDb.
Because they used him in a few scenes.
That was my whole thing. I had to look him up because I was like, did I miss his name?
Yeah.
But yeah, he's like the class heckler. This kid we've never seen. He has the, not JTT hair, what was Jonathan Taylor Thomas's older brother's name on the show?
Oh, you
Brad, or something like that.
Brad was his name on the show, and I think Brian was his name in his real life.
Okay.
To me, he had more of like a young Scott Wolf vibe. He wasn't blonde, was he?
I thought he was blonde. I mean, but again, like that's
guys, it's debatable. But
yeah, exactly. I mean, we could easily do this research, but we're not.
But honestly, I think he just had 3 different scenes with one-liners.
Exactly, and I was just surprised. It was like we got a whole new character, and what's this all about? But
sure,
I mean, we're also not going to have Topanga or Shawn be hecklers because Shawn was being very supportive.
Well, Shawn had his own stuff going on in this episode.
Actually, so I thought it was really interesting because before we get our surprise visit, I was wondering, I was like, Shawn is like being there for Corey, and he's like, it's not that bad, and Alan's not making the greatest impression.
Sure, yeah.
And Shawn is being supportive and there, and like even when Alan like feels like he's kind of bombing, Corey and Shawn are like, you're doing great, you know?
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, so where's Shawn's dad? Are we not going to explain this?
Well, I think he appreciates Alan so much more than Corey sometimes.
Oh, absolutely.
Because he understands.
But now we know why.
Yeah, we all know why now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So before we get to that, I just want to hit on Jebediah. Because Jebediah comes in and he knocks it out of the park.
Well, okay, so here's the thing about Jebediah. Is he humble or is he humble bragging?
I feel like he was humble because he never mentioned it. Topanga was the one who was like, tell them who called. And then he said, oh, Bruce. And then Mr. Turner was like, Springsteen? And Topanga again was like, yes, Bruce Springsteen.
Yeah.
So you're right that like Jebediah was...
That wasn't what I was talking about. It was when the one line kid was like,
Adam.
do you do other rock stars? And he's like, most of them.
Yeah, but again,
most of them.
If he was humble bragging, he would have been like, "Oh yeah, you know, like Sting," and like he could have like named names. He never named names. Jebediah did keep it low key, but he also knows he's a badass.
Sure,
you know what I mean? Like even when Alan's like, "Oh yeah, he makes them, but can he play them?"
Alan throwing that haterade hard,
and then Jebediah's just like, "Yo, by the way, here's Wonderwall." It's just like,
which to give credit, we've kind of mentioned this before that Jebediah is played at least at this point in the show by Peter Tork, formerly the guitarist of the Monkees.
Yeah,
which the Monkees not known to be musicians, but he still knew how to play clearly enough to strum what I can only assume was just like the most uncopyrighted like a series of chords that they could string together.
Most likely. But again, I think it's fun because we get to see Topanga and her family dynamic in a very because they're always like they were always made to be like hippies.
Sure.
And we get to see that Jebediah is someone who's like down to earth and humble. You get to see Topanga's origins.
What was the episode where they were kind of like, I don't know, kind of speaking down on Jebediah as a kind of a granola?
I forgot what I mean, there's several times.
Several times. So it's really interesting that in this episode, he's the cool guy.
Exactly. Well, I think it goes to show that, especially with Corey, I think Corey's constantly being surprised at like how the world really works. You know what I mean? Because he goes in with this expectation of Corey. At least when he was younger, he's like, I'm the cool kid, and my dad's got it going on, and like, how hard is it to get Christmas presents, and yada yada yada. And this season, he's very, very much like, wait, maybe my life isn't as glamorous as I thought it was. And even when Alan shows up, he's like, I'm the son of a grocer.
Honestly, I think you're giving Corey too much credit. I didn't think he had any expectations going in from the beginning. I think that finding out that like Topanga's dad had such a like awesome job definitely made it harder. But I think he knew what he was expecting because the episode starts with Alan just being like, all right, guess how much rice we have.
Yeah. Okay, so I have to say, when Alan came into the class and he's like talking about like the rice, I was like, here's the thing, running a grocery store, there are so many ways you can... That is a big responsibility.
Totally.
I mean, you're right. It's like, we have 27 things of rice. why would you pick that up?
And honestly, I'm sure we'll kind of go into Alan's storyline a little bit because I think this touches on a much bigger issue of him being unsatisfied with his career choices.
Completely.
And because he doesn't really take pride in what he does, he has a hard time speaking on it with
selling
pride.
it.
Yeah,
exactly.
Totally, because he doesn't believe in it himself. And they touch on it a little bit here, but it's definitely something that's just reoccurring.
So that leads us to, because I want to make a point about Alan's job, but in order to do so, I have to bring in someone who I just have to say I was not prepared for.
The most lovable deadbeat dad of all time.
I did not know we were getting him this episode, just because I didn't read ahead. And he turns that corner, and I'm like, I literally screamed, "Chat! Oh my god!" It's like you lovable fuck up.
Yeah, and he is charming right out the gate.
But also right off the gate, if you're an adult, you immediately get, oh, this is everything I needed to know about this person.
Exactly. There's a great line where he first comes in and Corey says to Shawn, like, oh, what does your dad do? And Shawn's like, shut up. I want to know too.
Yeah. He's like, shut up, I want to find out. And exactly, that was, for me, that was definitely a moment where it's like, all right, that lets you know everything you need to know about Chet. And first of all, Chet comes in and he was like, sorry, I was out in the hallway smoking. Don't endorse it. But also...
oh, okay, because actually, you know what? I didn't catch that. And so when he came in, he was like, Jebediah spoke of this, Alan spoke of this. I was like, Chet, you weren't here. How do you know what they talked about? But I guess he was in the...
He was in the hallway smoking. And it lets you know what you need to know about Chet. And again, he's just... As someone who grew up around sweet talkers and snake oil salesmen and like that, I immediately was like, oh, it's like he comes in and he's this big personality and he's lovable and he knows what to say to the kids and he's not saying anything. Like, what do you do? And he's
an idea man.
It's bullshit. He's like, do you like microwaves? You're welcome. And it's just like, no.
There was a fun little, Ted Turner joke in there where he was like,
yes.
I came up with the All News Network all the time. And Topanga, also known as Tippy, we find out.
Yeah, Tippy.
Tippy says, you invented CNN? He was like, oh, I mentioned it to a guy in the elevator. By the way, what's your last name? Turner?
No relation. Yeah.
So yeah, just a 90s bit.
Exactly.
90s bit.
But it's also the moment he's in this, he comes in and he's this way and he's talking, you get to see, and then you see, what I saw was Shawn being like, just more lies. No answers.
Well, Corey's says something about
your dad is really something, and
Shawn's like, yeah, he's something, all right.
Exactly.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that seeing Chet's large personality, I began to realize how kind of quiet and shy Shawn actually is. We always see him so full of ideas and energy, coming to Corey, getting super excited about something or another. But I think the reason we see that is because he's comfortable with Corey. In general, he's not a very loud person. And to see Chet there, I'm like, wow, okay, I'm really getting an idea of this dynamic and why Shawn is the way he is.
What's great is that you pointed that out, because so did I. Made that note. One of my notes was that Chet actually does explain Shawn in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
The only thing that doesn't kind of make sense with Chet, but would when you realize who Chet is Chet has this thick Southern accent. And you're like, but they live in Philadelphia, and Shawn doesn't have any remnants of it. But the fact that Chet's not there...
I don't think that Shawn is born in Philadelphia. I think that's something that we find out. I think he's either born in either Indiana or Texas.
All I'm saying is that it shows his relationship. I mean, of course this is most likely just a casting thing, but it shows his relationship with his father, the fact that he doesn't have the same accent and candor of his father. Because his father's never around.
Knows nothing about his life.
Yes,
he goes up
Corky.
to Corey and he he's like, hi, Shawn's friend. And I'm like, your kid spends every second of the day with this kid. He's constantly over at his house. You don't even know his name?
And to be fair, for a long time, I realized this episode, we mostly hear about Shawn's mom.
Oh, because, like, Verna. I don't even think we get her name in this episode.
No, we do. He says Verna.
Oh, okay.
He says, my heart's out there with Verna, or something like that. But what I'm saying is, even the first 2 seasons, which is what we've done, most of the time when we talk about Shawn's family, we're talking about his mother.
Yeah.
They mention his dad every once in a while, and you and I always get excited because we love Chet.
Yeah.
But they mostly refer to Shawn's mom.
Sure.
So Shawn's mom is the constant in his life. And Chet's the one who comes and goes.
And you would think that, one, Shawn would be more upset about his mom leaving, which he doesn't seem that upset about her leaving at all. Everyone's reaction is just like, oh, she does this all the time.
I completely disagree.
And I just thought that was so weird. Like, because Corey says to Alan, he's like, Shawn's mom took off. She's done this before, right? And I just thought he had a very flippant attitude about Shawn's mom's leaving. That's all.
I agree that Alan was kind of flippant about it, but I disagree that Shawn doesn't care. Shawn is completely torn up about his mother leaving. Yeah. You see it in his eyes the moment he finds out. I think A, it's a testament to Ryder Strong's acting that it's very subtle.
Sure.
And then B, it's very much like a teenager's reaction to, by the way, Chet comes to school in the middle of the day and just kind of mentions it casually.
Yeah.
That's all. It was literally like being hit by a bus. I'm watching this happen. He's like, oh yeah, by the way, he goes, did you say goodbye to your mother this morning?
Did you kiss your mom
goodbye this morning. May have to last you for a while. She's gone. Wait, what?
Like, what a way to tell your kid that your mom abandoned him.
You didn't sit him down privately.
No.
You didn't explain anything. All you said was, hey, you know that last time you saw your mother? Yeah, it may need to last you for a while because she's gone and she took the house with her.
That's the problem with the mobile home. It can, go places.
Here's the thing. There's no denying that Chet's not hilarious and fun to be around, but it's definitely one of those. He's one of those personalities that you love as a stranger, but even as a stranger, you're like, I don't want to be related to this man.
Yeah, and also too, it's just like this. I really wish we would have had a moment where, like you said, like he kind of takes Shawn to the side, because I feel like the entire reason why we don't really see Shawn react is because he's trying to look in front of Corey like it doesn't matter, like whatever, it's all cool, whatever, I don't care. You're right.
No, that was my thing. It's just like he is keeping up things so well. He's just like, oh yeah, like even when Corey's kind of like, hey, you could have stayed here last night. He's trying to downplay it, and he's just like, oh, look, everything will be fine. My dad will find my mom, and they'll come back. And he's kind of downplaying his panic, even though you know that these are concerns. And what's even crazier is they're grounded concerns. They're very realistic options.
Now, we talk about Chet being really lovable, but he's equally, if not more so, a bad parent, first and foremost. Parent. Not only does he constantly make terrible decisions involving Shawn, but he never gives Shawn, never ask him, hey, what do you think about this? What do you want to do?
Which Turner points out.
Yeah, later in the episode, which is thank God someone's asking Shawn to figure out, what his voice is in all of this. Because,
exactly.
Everything is being just brushed over him by Chet as, oh, it's not a big deal. He's fine. He's a good boy.
Well, I mean, when Chet comes in, he's like, would you calm down? I'm the principal of this school. Yeah. I'm Mr. Feeney. And the viewer's like, no, that's Mr. Feeney. And then I will say, when Shawn comes up and he's like, Mr. Feeney, and Chet answers, he's like, yeah? I was like, good on you, boy. Chet's
like, there's 2 Feenies in this school?
Exactly. I was like, you know what? This is why you're successful at what you do.
Yep.
Because you believe it. You don't, but you act like you believe it.
If I'm not, why am I parked in this spot?
And that's a great thing. But it also shows, the kind of responsibility Shawn has to have for his father. Because, like, he
Yeah.
comes in and he sees the situation. He's just like, hey, Mr. Feeney, this is my dad. Like I'm claiming ownership. But what I love about that is the moment that Mr. Feeney finds out that it's his dad, he goes, oh, we're actually really proud of Mr. Hunter.
Yeah.
And Chet's like, I'm surprised to hear you say that. And Mr. Feeney was like, I am too. But I think that I am too was that
I'm surprised I genuinely meant it.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. It was
Yeah.
a knee-jerk reaction from Feeney to say that. It's like, he hasn't met Chet yet, and I guarantee you it's something where it's like, he didn't know it, but there was a part of him that wanted to tell Shawn's parents, actually, I really think your child has a lot of potential, and he's constantly surprising me. But he's never had a parent-teacher conference with him. So the moment Chet shows up, he's just like, oh, it's like that thing. It's like, I've been waiting to tell you. Your kid's kind of great, but...
I also thought it was really interesting that Feeney was kind of... As soon as Shawn was like, hey, this is my dad, Feeney kind of understood a little bit more of just like, this isn't just some crazy man here. This is a troubled young man's father. I understand what's happening here.
Yeah.
And was immediately able to pick up those social cues.
Well, even, like, he lets him be. Like, he very easily could have, like, escorted or been like, hey, your father's not supposed to be here. But Feeney's like, oh, I get what's going on here. This man is a wild card in itself. It's probably already overwhelming to Shawn.
Yeah.
You know, this man's not a danger to the kids. We'll let it play out.
Sure.
And yeah, so that was definitely. I just think, just the moment he made the announcement, I was like, I was not expecting any of this. But Chet comes in like a tornado. He comes in like a tornado, and like a tornado, he is just pure destruction. Fascinating to watch. Yeah. But, like, the path is devastating.
I think I mentioned this once before, that the Boy Meets World set where they were filming was very close to the Home Improvement set.
Okay.
And the kids, I believe, actually tutored together and things like that. But because of that, you'll see a lot of crossover. So, for example, Amy played Jill's friend on Home Improvement, and Chet played Tim's friend on Home Improvement. So he actually, I believe, was on Home Improvement first, and I think Shawn was actually on the early episode of Home Improvement as well. So I just think there was a lot of interesting crossover there. Mostly, I wonder if Chet got the job because of location, is what I'm wondering.
mean, that's very possible. I remember, and I never thought about it up until right now, but a lot of the TGIF had casting crossover.
Totally.
And I'm pretty sure it was like, you're all in the same lot. It's like, you know who was really good at this character?
Sure.
You know? Yeah, it's probably even the same casting agent.
I imagine. They find kids they like and they just keep finding.
Exactly. I mean, because we seriously, there are certain characters where it's like they were on every single one of these shows.
Yeah.
Probably in the same year.
100%.
So, yeah. But yeah, Chet...
Now, Chet makes an interesting decision, which is a decision that lasts all of next season. And it's a decision that puts Shawn on the path of just insecurity for the rest of his life. When he says, hey, I'm going to go look for your mom. This woman who wanted to get away from me, who literally is running away from me, I'm going to go find her instead of being a parent to you.
Exactly.
And that's the thing, that's the major thing that makes Chet a piece of shit.
Well, so it's crazy because when I saw this and I saw the whole I'm going to go look for your mama thing, I was like, oh, he wants to maintain his vagabond lifestyle. He wants to maintain his mover and shaker, Rolling Stone-ness, because he says that he's looking for Verna, but we don't know that he has a kid out there with someone else.
Yeah.
So my immediately thought, even when his excuse later on is like, the road's no place for a kid. It's like no, that kid would slow you down. I mean, not saying that the road is a place for a kid, but I was just going to say in the show Supernatural, for example, he takes his kids with him. It's like he doesn't leave them at their aunt's and it's just like, I'll be back. I need to go find. He was like, no, these are my kids. I love them. We need to figure stuff out, but like they're coming with me. Matter of fact, there are several shows that are about parents being like, hey, we need to go across the country, but the kids are coming with us.
Sure.
Chet was like, you're gonna slow me down. I probably have things that you don't know about and deals that you don't need to see, so I'm going to leave you someplace and just check in on you.
See, I disagree with that, but I agree with the emotion of it, that he doesn't want Shawn with him, but I don't think it's because he thinks he's going to slow him down. I think that Chet truly believes in his heart that he is a bad father. He does not believe that he could take care of a kid, which is why he is not a father to Jack, who we don't even know about, and which is why he continuously tells Alan, who he just met, you're a good father. You could do this. I'm not that guy.
I will say that the moment, like Corey was really down on Alan. And again, we didn't really get into Alan's presentation, but it was, I have to admit.
Anyone else want a coupon? This one's for liquid soap.
I will say that, like, I was watching it, and they were like, Alan's going to be here. And they said the whole Bryce thing. And I was like, that's probably not going to be that bad. And then Alan presented, and I was like,
Cantaloupes are friends.
And then later on, when he's doing the coupon thing, I was like, Alan, please stop.
Yeah.
So I will say, it was embarrassing. We didn't even get, like, the whole 45-minute presentation or whatever. But right off the bat, he goes up to Corey, and he's like, hey, your father, salt of the earth, good man.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just like, and what they do with that, and what I wanted to say about Alan not being satisfied with his job is, as you said, Chet goes, this man, we got one man who's a musician and another man who feeds America. And, you know, he's like, again, because Chet's a salesman, he's already painted this romantic story of what Alan does and showed the value of Alan's job. And it's like, if Alan could just think of his job the way that Chet is able to sell his job, he would understand the value.
Well, I think also Chet just sees something in Alan that he doesn't see in himself, which is this, like, Chet, I imagine, cannot stay at one job for more than a few months without getting bored. He can't build a career. Exactly. And so when he sees that Alan has had the same job for 20 years or whatever, he's like, that's salt of the earth. This guy is, like, feeding America. He's speaking highly of him because he's like, this guy was able to commit to an idea. He was able to get a home. He was able to nurture his family in a way that I can't. And
he was able to grow up.
Yeah, he really was.
He was able to grow up. And I think that's, I mean, I love that we get this little piece of Alan's insecurity, which we've gotten before, but it's very relative at this point, because you see Alan even kind of struggling with, I have this boring job, it's safe and blah, blah, blah. And Amy's kind of like, no, but you do so much more than that. You're a provider. You are living up to your responsibilities. And it's kind of brushed off when she says it, but when Chet puts it, I don't feel like it still has the same weight to Alan, but it's just the show is saying, and the audience understands how valuable it is to have someone like Alan.
Sure. And you know what? There's a moment when he's telling Amy that, you know, he's not really proud of what he's doing, and you know, and I don't know if it's talked about so much in this episode, but it's something we definitely learn. Alan didn't grow up with a lot of money.
Yeah, we know that.
You know, we later find out that his dad, quote unquote, died with a broom in his hand.
Yeah.
And so Alan worked incredibly hard to get the home and the lifestyle for his kids, and I just don't think, like, I think he understands that his kids don't appreciate it, but they can't appreciate it because he was so good at doing what he set out to do.
Exactly. I mean, and that's from what I'm hearing, that's being a parent. It's just totally. Your kids literally won't know the sacrifices you've made if you do it the right way.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like a burden in itself. And I just keep going back to, I mean, it's really always unfortunate that we don't get to see more of it, but I always think of that pivotal Boy Meets World episode where Amy goes back to school.
Sure.
And we get to really get some more depth in Amy.
Yeah.
And that's what I think. It's just like no, they're making all these sacrifices. Your parents make sacrifices to bring you up in a world to where you don't understand the pain and trauma that they went through. But by doing so, it's kind of like, they raise people who are just, they can't be appreciative of
or they raise people who have a normal established for them that is so much higher than the normal you established for yourself.
And that normal being so high means that whenever you fall short of being the A1 parent that's
Yeah.
literally taking all of your effort, and you become human for a second, especially for children, it's just not enough.
Yeah.
And you lash out and you're angry. And
Because Corey, at least during the initial presentation, he is so embarrassed of his dad. He is just squirming in his chair. And obviously, like, all kids are kind of embarrassed of their parents in a way. But the pride that Topanga had for her dad, there was just not even a smidgen of that in Corey.
But I also think it's it shows, it's kind of like, we're constantly getting to see it through someone else's eyes, because as much as Corey's squirming, Shawn is the one who's like, look, your dad was not that bad. Yeah. And I think he says that because he knows in the back of his head who Chet is. And then when Chet shows up, you get to see why Shawn prefers the Matthews. Why, it's just
totally.
Yeah, for him, that's a normalcy or a consistency that he just doesn't get anywhere else. It also reminds me of, I was just going to say, it reminds me of, I watched this Green Prism YouTube video on Sally Draper. Talked about Sally Draper and Don Draper. And, everyone else got to see Don Draper. They were so busy, like, idolizing him that we don't really get to see it through Sally's eyes until she gets older, and we realize how much trauma this girl is going through seeing her parents. But there's that episode where Don tells his kids where he grew up, and he's like, this is where I grew up. And it kind of puts some frame of reference into, oh, you are, like, I don't know that much about you as a person. And I think, it just mirrored to me a lot about, like, that learning about your parents. Your parents are people too, and they have hopes and dreams.
And they also have a story. Like, they started somewhere and ended up somewhere. So, like, finding that out is really, I think, important to find out who you are in a lot of ways.
Exactly.
So.
And as you were saying, a lot of what we see in Chet will come to define Shawn.
Yeah.
This episode is actually, it's crazy because this episode is more important than any other episode in the terms of Shawn's character.
And it's really interesting because we have that scene where, Turner's on his date and Shawn just kind of shows up. And why is Shawn having this moment with Turner instead of Corey? Why is he not at the Matthews being like, hey, can I have dinner here tonight or whatever?
Well, I think...
And I think the reason is because, one, I think he feels like he constantly depends on the Matthews. And he feels like, I can't ask anything more of them. And I also feel like there's a relationship that he has with Alan and Amy that's respectable. But those are still Corey's parents.
Yes.
Whereas with Jonathan, he has undivided attention. And I think that's something that Shawn wants more than anything, is just attention.
Well, I was going to say that it's not just attention, which attention is great. And I think that what you said about the Matthews is also very accurate. I think for Shawn, because I was wondering, why did he show up at Mr. Turner's place? But they kind of point out that the motel that he's staying at is right down the road. So it's one of those things where it's like he's alone and he's in this area, and in a really real way, he talks about, like, oh, he's okay at being at that motel, but I honestly think he just didn't feel safe.
100%.
It's like he didn't feel safe and he wanted some kind of authority figure. And I think the thing about Jonathan is he has shown to be an authority figure who pays attention, which goes back to what you were saying, but it's like he not only is, like, providing attention to them, but it's like he pays attention, and values and cares. Like,
obviously,
the mere fact that he asks when Chet shows up, he's like, "Hey, have you asked Shawn what he wants?" I think that that's something that shows why Shawn showed up in the first place.
Now, it's interesting too because when Shawn's saying that he's staying at this hotel, Turner kind of freaks out. He's like, that hotel down the street? Which, by the way, kind of shows you a little bit about where Turner's living.
But but we've already known that. Like, I think it's great that they do this, but they constantly are like, by the way, these teachers make nothing.
Yeah.
It's a constantly being said, hey, by the way, this teacher is not, like, living it up in some great loft. he is in this 1-bedroom apartment, per Shawn's whole location of the motel. It's not in the greatest of areas.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's also interesting, too, because, you know, Turner's like, you know, you can't live in a hotel. But just coming from someone who's lived in Central Florida his whole life, kids legit live in hotels. They just made a movie about it. So
actually, I completely forgot about this. The first few months I lived in Florida, I lived in a hotel.
Well, was it just like you moved there and you were looking, or was it
we moved there, and my mom had it was when we moved there. It's like we had moved there, and my mom had just gotten a job. I think we had landed in Florida. She was very fortunate. She got the job the day that we landed.
Wow.
But she didn't have a paycheck yet.
Yeah.
She didn't have a mailing address yet. So
sure,
we lived in a hotel. And yeah, I went to school from a hotel and all this other stuff.
Yeah, because I was going to say, at least driving around the part of Florida that I was in, it was not uncommon at all to see school buses stop
at a hotel.
At hotels.
Or a motel, actually.
Yeah, really.
Because it's this isn't a Holiday Inn.
No, these are places where, you were just you wouldn't think to stay there on vacation. Why?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. So, I think it's one of those things where it's going back to it's you shouldn't have to, or no kid should have to live out of a hotel, unless they're traveling with their family to play music across the country.
Yeah.
But outside of that, every kid wants to or would like to have something stable to call home. And from this episode, we get Shawn's trajectory, and we kind of understand that things are about to get real in a way that I just wasn't prepared for.
Yeah, and one other thing I wanted to mention about him visiting Turner was Turner offered him food.
Yeah,
and Shawn inhales this food, and it's one of those things where I just kind of went, oh, no. He hasn't eaten. This kid got dropped off by his dad at a shit hotel where he had to get clean sheets through a guy from a cage. And
pay him
$5 to turn the TV on. And he's freaking out. He finally gets to this place where he feels safe, and he gets to eat a meal for the first time since who knows.
And again, all the while trying to keep up pretenses. And that's another thing. It's as an adult, I know how stressful and exhausting it is to keep up appearances as an adult. As a kid who has all these other things, but then he also, again, his best friend has this 3-bedroom, 2-car garage type home.
Yeah.
And he doesn't want to lean on them again. He wants more than anything for life to just be as normal as it can be. So he goes somewhere where he knows it won't get out that he had to stay at this hotel. And what's even crazier is they do that whole thing where it's you see Turner cleaning up, and immediately you're Shawn sleep. But
and you know what? I thought it was believable that he fell asleep.
Yes, absolutely. Because again, his mind was finally at rest. He had a place where he felt safe.
That's a big part.
Absolutely.
So we get to this part where
let's talk about Feeney and Mr. Turner.
Yeah, Feeney and Turner are talking, and Feeney really warns Turner that you have to. You're playing with a line here between authoritative and friend, between teacher and student, kind of circling back to their original dynamic, but also making way for a next level of that next season when Shawn and Turner are living together full time, and Feeney having a new reason to be suspicious of this teacher's approach towards Shawn and the rest of his students.
Well, I mean, it is one of those things to where you do realize, you can't save every student. So the idea that he is doing this, or that he cares this much about Shawn, it's one of those things to where I think about the show Grey's Anatomy. And in the first season of Grey's Anatomy, the character Izzy is really attached to her patients, and they're always that's not a good thing. You need to have some sort of detachment. And as a viewer, you're always why is it a bad thing to care about someone? You're no, because of your position, it is. It's not a good thing. You can't be this involved with your students or with your patients. And the fact that Turner does want to kind of swoop in and like be involved, even when
he even says to Feeney though, like, "What would you have me do, George? Like, this kid who came to my place. He was hungry. He was dirty. Was going to drop them off at this hotel again? Like, what better option did he have? I think he understood that like he was making what he felt was the best decision possible for Shawn, and I think Feeney recognized that too, but just with a warning.
Well, the whole idea is Turner did the right thing that night. But when Alan's like, hey, Shawn, your dad's here, and Mr. Turner's like, oh, hey, can I speak to him for a minute? Because I have some things I want to say. That's when Feeney's like, remember, you got to toe that line.
Did he ever even say anything to Chet, though?
Yeah, he did. Remember, he's the one, again, when Chet goes and he's like...
yeah, but other than that, did he actually, like...
Well, I think that he was blindsided by what was said, because we got to talk about what was said.
All right, so Chet drops a bomb.
Yeah.
Basically saying, hey, Amy and Alan, those are your names, right?
Wait. What he says is, Adam, I've always considered you a friend. And he goes, my name's Alan.
I've always considered you a friend. Hey, can you watch my kid indefinitely while I go chase this woman who doesn't want to be with me?
It'll only be like a few days, a couple of weeks tops. And first of all, whenever it goes from a few days to
a couple of weeks, a few days to a week is the next progression.
Yeah. A few days, a week max is how that should go. A few days, a couple of weeks tops, you're like, oh, this is...
A couple of weeks can be 2 weeks or 16 weeks.
Exactly. But point is, you see, as an adult, I don't know if I picked this up as a kid, but as an adult, you immediately understand Chet's way of like sweet talking in. Again, he asked them in front of Shawn
and Corey
and Turner, and kind of be like, again, no pressure, but
no, I need the answer right now. Actually,
yeah, no pressure, but my kid kind of needs a place to stay. And he's best friends with your kid. And again, no pressure.
But you know what? But, I do think it was a lot more of, I know that I trust you to be a good father.
I'm not saying that that's not true. I'm saying it's manipulative.
Yeah, 100%.
Here's the thing. He could have went and been like, hey, I need to go
Pulled Alan aside privately.
Alan and Amy.
Give them the option to say no.
Exactly. But he doesn't do that.
No.
He specifically puts them in a position where they have to say yes, even if they didn't want to, because you're not going to tell Shawn, first of all, you're not going to tell your kid that their best friend can't stay.
In all fairness, though, I think if Corey had came to both of them and said the same thing, they would have said yes.
No, again, I'm not saying that they wouldn't have. I'm saying that
the way he
left them no choice.
100%.
There's nothing wrong with the situation. It's how Chet went about it.
He also at one point is like, I can send you some money or whatever. And Alan's like, don't bother. We have coupons. He's like, all the better. All the better. I don't have to do anything to support or raise this kid. He said I could throw into
the till. But what's crazy is you should be like, hey, you're doing me a huge favor. I'll make sure that he never adds to your expenses, blah, 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 blah. What Chet says is, hey, I could throw in a few bucks every now and again for you raising my kid.
Sure.
And Alan, because he knows it's a false offer, he's just like,
don't even bother.
Don't even worry about it. And Chet's like, good on you.
Yeah.
And... again, it's this dance that as adults you get, so well, and I think Shawn knows so well. But the thing is, Corey doesn't, and
he's like, "Oh, we get to room together. This will be great." And Shawn's like, "Well, we'll see about that." Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, it's always great to live with your best friend. That's never not worked out.
I think for him, it's not even that. It's it's so great to not have a home. Like a place that's my home.
Well, no, I mean, I think that's it. But I honestly think it's a situation. Think about it. If you and I right now had to move in together and be roommates, it's like, I've known you, we're cool, but it's like,
and also in one room.
Exactly, and it's not just him and
it's his brother too.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. It's like he's like, oh, this will. Shawn's like, not Shawn. Corey's like, this will be great, and Shawn's like, you're looking at it as in, oh, my friend gets to sleep over. I'm looking at it as I now am a guest in someone else's house. with someone else's rules and someone else's lifestyle, and
Right.
I have no autonomy.
Yeah.
Because I have to behave like I'm a guest.
Exactly, the entire time. Yeah, it was interesting because Chet's like, oh, let's go pack your stuff. Oh, wait, your mom took everything. Which, by the way, let's get back to Verna there for a second. Regardless of her reasoning for leaving Chet, her taking the home is her... She shouldn't be allowed to be with Shawn anymore. Like, that mother should not have...
So, as someone who does not have kids, I have learned to not judge.
She took her kids home in his clothes.
I'm not disagreeing on that. What I am saying is, we don't really get a lot of Verna's story, and because of that, I am hesitant to say anything because I don't know. But I will say, you're not wrong. I feel that you also don't just get up and decide to take the house one day. So if she got up and she took a trailer, and I don't know if you know much about trailers, but trailers aren't just parked. Those things so if she got and took the entire trailer and left, I'm assuming Girlie had some reasons.
Yeah, I just can't think of a reason that would be good enough to take your kids' clothing and shelter away.
But maybe she also took his sister with him because
Shawn's sister.
Yeah, exactly. Like he had a sister up until this point, so maybe that's she took one kid and she's like, I'll take the girl and you keep the boy, and that's how she thought about it.
Yeah, it's just hard to understand either of his parents' actions, and I think, you know what, I don't know how unrealistic it is, but to me it really was. Even as a kid, I remember watching this episode and thinking, well, why is he doing it this way?
Yeah, well, like, I think it is a realistic thing of deadbeat parents. It's, but also not only of deadbeat parents, because that is saying a lot, but I have to also think about it. There are plenty of times where, as an adult, you kind of selfishly think, I have to take care of me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I have to figure out what I'm going to do next. And when you have children, that changes, and I think everyone would hope that you put your kids first, but some people don't have that capacity. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And especially someone like Chet, who has kind of been given the freedom to think about himself for most of his life, which you can tell.
Yeah.
I think the idea of putting Shawn first it just wasn't an option for him. You know what I mean? And I think for him, putting Shawn first was leaving him somewhere safe.
I do agree with that. I do think that Chet understood that he did not have the capacity to take care of Shawn and put him in an environment that he felt that would be the best for him. There's just a lot of just ignoring Shawn's agency.
But I also think it comes back to a place of Chet is this happy-go-lucky, ray of sunshine type person, which we know is like full of shit and like I don't want to say a con artist, but like a swindler type person. And I think it's one of those things where I've seen a lot of male adults do this with their kids, where like they don't want to change their perception of their kid, of them to their kid. So they're like, he's like, oh, I don't want him to see me at my weakest. I don't want him to see me when I'm angry. So I'm going to leave him here. And you're like, but your kid already knows that this is a facade. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I mean, again, the reason why I kind of bring up his reasoning in all of this is because, like I said, he's gone the entire third season.
Yeah.
So, like, it's one of those things to where maybe he thought he was making a good decision at some point, but at some point he just decided not to come back.
Oh, yeah. And again, it was a decision to not come back.
Yeah.
And I think, like I said, this episode took me by surprise because it was just like, whoa, I was not expecting. I wasn't expecting Chet, and I wasn't expecting everything that came with Chet.
Yeah, totally.
All right, so before we end, I do want to mention, we get a B-plot that I was a little concerned about.
About Eric and Jason?
Eric is clearly literally struggling. Like,
well, no. Here's what I interpret it as, because I feel like this is something that Boy Meets World actually does in the college episode too. Just this idea that like tests make students crazy, and like studying for the SATs, PSATs, whatever. It's just the studying of it. You're kind of loopy and all over the place, and I didn't think of him the way I thought of the boys last episode during the pop quiz, where I'm like, how did they get to this grade? I was just like, he is studying so much that he's stressing, he's psyching himself out.
but what I'm saying is, this goes back to the idea of Eric is showing clear signs that everything is not okay.
Sure.
And everyone just kind of ignores it. Even Feeney's like, oh, I hate SAT season.
Yeah.
And you're like, this kid is
stressed to the limit.
He's stressed out. He's running into things. He's losing sensations in his body.
Yeah.
Because he understands this and the pressure of being a student. And no one at any point in time goes, hey, can I help you? Or do you want to like take a moment and breathe? It's just a test. You
Even
get
Jason, who's so cool as a cucumber the entire time. And it's just like, don't worry about it. He's fine. He just ran into a tree. He's fine.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. He just ran into a tree.
Yeah.
But like my whole thing was, the difference with that was Jason was prepared.
Yeah.
You know, and because Jason was prepared, and Jason just kind of keeps showing that he's prepared for it, that's why he wasn't as anxious. But to me, it was a testament to what they talk about all the time, which is like the pressure we put on these kids. For Eric, this is so important that he's losing sensations in his body and like all this other stuff. And but it's not like he's doing all this without reason, or like what I mean by that is, I can't think of the right words, but he does study. He does come around and eventually learn all these things. But then he finds out there's another part to the test, and just it's like, oh, again, the pressure that is this test is not great, and I don't think it's healthy. And I think that what's even worse is that he doesn't seem to get any help from anyone else.
Yeah.
And
well, I think also, I think the reason why Jason felt so cool, like you said, he was prepared, but I think this is to illustrate that Eric is not where the rest of his students are. Eric is a little bit behind. So when Eric actually does get left back...
Well, by the way, didn't know that was coming. You just ruined it for
me. So no, did I?
Not only do you have to put something in the jar...
I'm sorry, I thought you knew he got left back.
No, I mean, like, don't get me wrong. I think you keep saying it, but, like, I didn't know that was coming next. So, but yeah, no. It's something to where... I didn't know that, so I'm a little upset.
I'm so
but
sorry.
Either way,
I thought you knew.
Either way, no, I think you're right. It kind of shows that Eric's not on the same length or wavelength as everyone else, and that's upsetting. But I still just think that it's also a commentary just on our society. We have like this entire thing where we put all this pressure on kids to like live up to these standards, and there's just no help or like even care from the parents, because to be fair, they're kind of dealing with something bigger with Shawn, but that only comes till later.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Anything else you want to talk about this episode?
I don't think so. I feel like we talked about a good chunk of it.
I think we did it a really good analysis. We talk about Chet
I know. Lot. Chet's just such a character.
Well, Chet is like such a great character to watch, but he comes with a lot of baggage
100%.
That, again, I did not see coming.
Sure.
Okay. What grade are you giving this episode?
Is it grade then lesson?
Why not? It's our podcast.
All right. Well, you know what? I'm gonna give this episode a B+.
All right, cool. Yeah.
I thought it was a solid episode. I thought that we had a lot of interesting character development. I thought that there's a scene at the end with Corey and Alan where Corey's just basically like, thanks for giving the speech, and also like you kind of left out like the important stuff, the stuff you do around the house, and which, by the way, is not the first time Corey's told this to Alan. We heard this in first season too. But just I felt like that was just a good time. He's like, you took care of my friend, and like that means a lot to me. Yeah. And so because of that, I'm proud to be your son.
Yeah.
And so I think that was just a good just like bow onto an episode that was very well thought out and well written. Obviously, some of the Eric stuff was kind of silly, but I thought overall it was a very good episode.
I'm not the son of a grocer. I'm the son of my father. And again, it's like that's one of those Boy
Michael
Meets
Jacobs
World.
moment.
Yeah, where you're like, you need to put that in there, but
we feel you.
I feel you. I feel you. Yeah. Same thing. I think this was definitely a B+ episode. And I'm just surprised by it. So I guess from that we can go into lessons. What was your Feeny taught me?
Feeny taught me, I think, is don't abandon your kids. I don't know if that was said at any point, but I just felt like that was kind of a big don't abandon your children.
I think that, like, so usually when I think about the Feeny lesson, I think of like what the episode's trying to say, which I think yours, don't abandon your kid, is one. But I also think Feeny is a great resource for a lesson this episode, which is that there is this line, and you got to figure out how to toe that, because I think what he says to Turner is really important. I mean, like, we know the trajectory, and we know that Shawn's going to end up living with Turner, but in reality, I just go back to, you can't save everyone. You can't be a superhero. So learning how to be a figurehead but not solve the problem is a balance.
Well, and also, I mean, if we're talking like traditional Feeny lesson, Alan is the one who has the big emotional arc in this episode. He's the one who actually learned something. So his, like, it's, I might not be doing what I want to in my career, but I can be amazing as soon as I get home. I think that's a lesson that the show is trying to drive home to.
Okay, so anything else? So are we on the homework?
Homework, yeah. What you got?
Homework. Go for it.
All right. Well,
do you have one? I have a homework review.
All right, go ahead.
All right, so because we were talking about it earlier, at this point in time, the Ariana Grande Thank You Next video has just come out. It's amazing. If you haven't seen it by now, you have to live under a rock because there's no way you missed it. But that made me go back and watch a few of the movies, and Legally Blonde is a fantastic movie.
Can we have a real moment right now? I've never seen the movie.
Okay, so there's been plenty of movies that I've told you that I've never seen, so I will allow that.
But also, like, why would I have seen it?
I'm not really gonna.
It wasn't marketed to me, and I get...
No. Here's the thing: I watched, like, looking at the movies that Ariana Grande picked. I reminded myself, I was like, she had a gay older brother. She does. She had a gay older brother, and because of that, I was like, that explains her interest in all of these. But no, definitely Legally Blonde, though, you have to watch.
All right, yeah, I'll give it a shot.
It's a surprisingly feminine, like, it's a really good movie. She's almost always she's consistently positive. She's always helping people. She has supportive friends. Like, I just looked at this movie and it's like, I didn't even realize all the subtle things that they were saying about ways to be a modern woman that you just didn't really see very often. And the character Elle Woods is something worth watching and something worth sharing with your kids or your friends who've never seen it. Dude, you gotta watch it. It's free on YouTube, by the way.
I will give it a shot. It is considered a classic. One thing I want to throw out there, John Leguizamo has a new special on Netflix called Latin History for Morons. And it's one of his traditional one-man shows that I don't know if you've ever seen on, like, HBO, and, like, Spike Lee did some. I think John Leguizamo is a fantastic performer. I love his one-man shows. He is, but I'm always reminded of, I think it was Family Guy or American Idol. It's one of those Seth MacFarlane joints where they talk about the John Leguizamo one-man show. And it's just like, and I was all like, hey, Hector. And he was like, hey, mommy. And it's just like, it's like this whole little... It's very true. He does a lot of character work. But what I really loved is that the whole special is basically about, like, his kid getting teased in school because you know, they were talking about history or whatever, and a white kid told him that, you know, I'm the descendants of like soldiers and heroes and all these things from history. What are you, Beaner? Or something like that. To which John Leguizamo freaked out. And then he was like, no, Latin people have done lots of things. And his son was like, what though? And then John Leguizamo was like, oh shit, I need a school myself. And so he did all this research so that he could teach his son, like, to feel proud about his heritage. And he, you know, learned, like, he, through the special, talks about, you know, Latin people and what they've contributed to history. And
so many things.
We
like,
basically
ridiculous things.
Funded
absolutely
everything that Europe says is
everything that Europe. First of all, most of America is based on the fact that, again, especially if you want to talk modern history, especially after World War, it was just like during the war we were like, hey, come here and do all the work that none of our men can do because they're all fighting this war that we shouldn't be involved in. And the moment they came out, they're like, oh yeah, you should go now. And we just constantly did that with Mexicans in particular, where we were like, oh hey, this was your land, but we're gonna claim it as ours now. No real law saying that it is.
We're in California. We're in basically what should
was
be
Mexico. Yeah. Exactly. And by the way, we just took it.
We just took it. We just killed them and took it.
Yeah, this is ours now. And they were like, I've kind of lived here forever. And they were like, well, then why are you in America? Because Mexico's over there. It's like, but you moved the fence. And they were like, sounds to me like you're still on the opposite side.
Like, I would be okay with building a wall, but if we made it what Mexico used to be, and then I'll just be on this side of Mexico. That's fine.
You know what? I'm completely okay with that. Build the wall, the original wall.
Yeah, the original wall.
I have to say, this is nothing new if you've been listening to us, but the whole history of, like, whenever I see anything that's like keep white people out or keep Americans out, I'm like, yes, keep us out. Because, like, the whole thing where that missionary who got killed by I was like, you know what, that's what you get. Leave people alone.
Leave them alone. They're out there doing their thing. They don't need help. They definitely don't need your diseases like that. Have you learned nothing from
Here's the thing. I think that I think that those people had
those people know.
They don't even get our media, and they were like, nah, son,
no, we ain't doing
we saw what you did to those other ones.
We don't care.
But yeah, no, thank you for that. I'm gonna definitely check it out.
Yeah, I think it's definitely worth checking out because we always talk about, you know, you can't be what you can't see, and so just kind of learning, you know, me being partly Spanish, however my DNA results want to throw it in there. It was just cool, interesting for myself to just kind of learn. Cause
honestly, when you learn the history of any other people's, unfortunately, most of American history is Eurocentric and only selectively so on top of that.
You learn so much about Europe. And it's one of those things, here's the thing too, is that, like, even myself, like, I remember being in Florida and having a kid ask me, well, what are you? And I was like, oh, I'm black and I got Spanish and whatever. And he's like, oh man, you got the two worst ones. Like, that's like, this is an actual reality of
that
like
always, I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but I had a situation happen to me in New York, and one of my coworkers who's white but always well-meaning or whatever, I was telling them my story of what happened to me, and a coworker of mine who's Asian was telling me a similar story, just kind of like sharing, and the white coworker was like, wait, but aren't you the good minority? Talking to him, and I was like, there's so much to unpack.
Yeah.
Like,
which one's the bad one, bro?
Yeah. She was like, but aren't you a good minority? And you're like, okay, so first of all, that shows that white people do have us classified.
Oh, absolutely. Asians, you got lucky.
Yeah, exactly. And then also, it's just like, at what point in time are you supposed to be grateful for your rank as sub-white?
Yeah, it's all very strange.
This took a turn.
Anyways, guys, enjoy your homework.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you guys so much for listening to Brown Beats World. Remember, you can find us on Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, all the places. Make sure to leave us a rating. Keep messaging us. On that, thank you guys who can leave comments and answer the questions that we pose out there. The other day, we made a really big deal about Harley not being on one of the episodes, and it turns out there's a reason for it. So yeah, I want to say thank you to Savannah Grace. She wrote us and told us that they replaced the original Harley in this episode because Danny McNulty had a bipolar breakdown in the middle of the episode. And the next episode, they sent Harley to a reformatory school and when Danny recovered, they brought him back for one last appearance. It's actually, she wrote, like, it's on the internet if you just Google Danny McNulty. And I was like, thank you for doing the bare minimum that we could not do.
We could not do it ourselves.
Bare minimum. And we were like, nah, it's fine. We'll just complain about it.
Sure.
If you have any more answers to any of our questions or want to tell us how lazy we are, please feel free to do so all of the things at Bruh Meets World. You can find me on Twitter at XTRACEEJ. That's Extra Siege. And Tonafi.
You can find me at @abraverme, at .braver.me on Instagram. You can also find me talking about Boy Meets World right here, wherever the hell you're listening to this right now.
Okay. You guys remember to dream, try, and do better than Chet.
That's the bare minimum, guys. Do better than Chet. Not even do good, just do better than Chet.
Okay, later, bros.
Later, bruh.